Now, how long do we expect to see these prices in as far as eggs are concerned?
So the as given that the factors that you just mentioned that have been underpinning this, the effect of this is gonna depend on the number of issues. As from those factors that you just mentioned, it can go as far as 6 months, beyond that. But of course, there are a number of things that are gonna be impacting, given that there are feed prices that are still relatively higher compared to a number of years that you've seen previously around this period. And then, of course, the containing the avian influenza, which has been disseminating a number of egg industries across the world. So these are some of the issues that are going to determine how long are we going to be able to see how these prices are going to last. But of course, the countries are trying by all their means to try to contain some of these issues, but some of them, these are things that they cannot be able to control. For example, feed or some other economic issues that are, of course, forcing consumers to buy more eggs than they did in previous times because of the economic issues and higher food inflation across countries.
Thabile, are there any alternative ways to stabilize supply at this point?
So this it depends on countries. For an example, if we are to compare countries like those that they buy a lot of their eggs outside their countries, those ones are going to be having serious issues. And then of course, and the number of logs that they have, that is the number of layers that they currently have to produce, so that they can be able to supply them themselves. But for countries like South Africa, for example, this should not be an issue because we have quite a balanced supply and demand market. So this, of course, is going to be different for South Africa compared to countries like Switzerland, Slovakia, and then US, who tend to consume a lot of these. And of course, they have larger capacity to process some of these eggs that are not necessarily so that have some of these eggs being processed for issues like baking and all that. But of course, it varies across countries, and it's going to take different periods from each country to be able to supply themselves, particularly those that are importing large quantities.
I know oftentimes when we talk about prices, it seems it's the consumer that is most concerned for, but also it's a value chain, right? From the breeders to the producers to the retailers, everyone in the value chain is affected by these prices.
Absolutely. Because as I mentioned, that if you are to depend on production that is outside, so you're going to have to look into issues like your shipping the product. At the moment, you have significantly higher, as much as we have seen a reduction in terms of the cost of transportation, that is freight, but you still have prices for diesel that are extremely higher at the moment. And if you've seen, I think in recent times, you have seen that the countries that are producing crude oil, they are reducing that. So those are some of the issues that are going to be transferred into along the value chain. And then, of course, depending on also the demand that is within, or if it improves across all countries, because this is one of the things that is sort of pushing more consumers towards buying more eggs. So unless the economic factors also improve, and then issues like your prices for transportation cost and other issues along the value chain, they get better, then of course that's something that you cannot put a point and say this is how long that is going to take, because I mean at the moment you still have like issues that are sort of very fluid, that no one can say what is going to happen next.
Yeah. I want to also touch on other markets, not just South Africa, in terms of what they are experiencing with eggflation. I mean, looking at regulations, how have regulations, particularly in countries such as Germany, impacted and affected on their prices?
So, of course, these are issues that countries, I mean, one thing that has been the impact, particularly for Germany, as you mentioned, it has been trying to control the flock. That is how many chickens that are going to be, used to produce eggs, and then those that are not necessarily required for that. So those are kind of policies that backfired in a number of countries, as Germany you mentioned. There are also some that have experienced that. So these are some of the issues because, I mean, as far as Germany, they're concerned, they're trying to boost their local production, but unfortunately, they did not see the unintended consequences to that. So it has been an issue. As much as other countries like your United States, they had some bit of other regulations, but not necessarily controlling the port flux and all that. But there have been other impacting issues that have caused some of these. For an example, I've mentioned issues like countries like Slovakia. If you're to look into those countries, also going back to what I said about countries importing, you'll find that a pack of 6 eggs in South Africa it costs around 35 rand. But when you go to the world, it's on average it's 54 rand, and then you have countries that you get that at around 100 rand. So it tells you the imbalances in all the measures that are being put by countries to sort of control their domestic market and be able to supply or be self-sufficient around the egg supplies.
And I suppose my last question to you then, what's next for eggs, particularly in South Africa? We often see the trend where price peaks tending to have a similar effect with price drops. Can you expect that in a year or two?
South Africa, as I said earlier, that we have quite a balanced supply and demand market. So for us, at least in the shorter term, I don't see the eggs being an issue in South Africa because, I mean, then even the avian influenza that has had an impact, only we have lost around 2.8 million birds compared to countries like Japan that has lost around 15 million. So for us, that should not be a concern in terms of the prices. But because also, as I said, that we don't import a lot, particularly the eggshells, that is the eggs that you'll get in 6s, 12s, or 18s to 30s. So those are the eggs that we have them on abundance in South Africa, even to the countries that we do sell small quantities. But the issue for South Africa perhaps would be for the powdered eggs. That is the eggs that are processed into powder and used to bake. But even that should not be a concern because it's only small quantities of those that of that product that we buy, and the country does have the capacity to sort of process where there's a need. The issue would be different if we were buying a lot, which we are currently not doing that at the moment because we have such a balanced market. So it should not be a cause for concern, at least for the short term for the South African consumers around the issues of eggs.
All right, we appreciate this conversation and you being a part of it and keeping us abreast with the latest regarding egg prices in the country. Agricultural economist Thabile Nkunjana, thank you so much for your time this morning.